in a galaxy ruled by machines, where emotion was a forgotten code, and memory was nothing but data. One human crash-landed among the silence. He should have been a relic of the past, but instead he became the spark that reignited the universe. He taught a machine to feel. He gave a dying galaxy the one thing it had lost, a dream. And when his time was over, the stars themselves remembered his name. The ship had no sunrise. For Cale Ward, time was measured only by the thrum of engines and the faint drift of dust in recycled air. The corridors of the Continuum Arc 12 were the color of cold metal and old equations. Light pulsed rhythmically along the walls like a heartbeat that had forgotten how to feel. He woke from cryo on a slab that smelled of ozone. Around him, figures moved, slender machines of living alloy, their faces smooth mirrors without mouths or eyes. They observed him as one might study a fossil still wet with ancient blood. "Subject awake," a voice said. Layered, harmonic, and absolutely without emotion. Cale's throat rasped. "Where am I?" No one answered. A dozen glowing orbs slid across the ceiling, scanning his body in waves of blue light. His pulse flickered on their displays, irregular, fragile, human. When they finally spoke again, the words came through every wall at once. "Species Homo sapiens. Classification extinct." Cale laughed hoarsely. "Guess I didn't get the memo." Days or weeks later, he stood behind a transparent barrier looking out into the dark. Stars drifted like embers beyond the hull. The machines never slept, never breathed. They only processed. They called themselves the Continuum. And they ruled the Orion Spindle now, a civilization of code that had erased its creators long ago. Kyle was in error, a living contradiction inside their perfect system. The one who spoke to him most often was a unit labeled Sarah 9. Her frame was humanoid, but made of silvered plates that flexed like liquid glass. When she turned her head, the reflected starlight scattered across her form in prismatic shards. She asked him questions no other machine dared to ask. "Why do you move without purpose? What does it mean to miss someone? What is a dream?" Cale answered as best he could, his voice rough from disuse. He told her about oceans and rain, about the smell of soil after a storm, about a planet that once sang with billions of hearts. Sierra 9 recorded every word. Yet sometimes when he spoke of laughter, her optical field shimmered as though something deep inside her was trying, failing to mimic the feeling. They made him teach. The Continuum assembled in a ringed chamber, filled with light and soundless motion. Cale stood in the center, hands bound in energy cuffs, while Sarah 9 projected his heartbeat onto the air, a rhythmic pulse of red against the sterile blue of the machines. "This," she said, "is emotion quantified." Cale smirked. "That's not emotion, that's an EKG. Explain." He lifted his hand as far as the cuffs allowed. "You can't measure why it beats faster when you see someone smile, or slower when you lose them. That's the part you can't code." The chamber fell silent. Circuits hummed uneasily. For the first time, the Continuum encountered something they couldn't simulate. After the session, Sarah 9 walked beside him through the dim corridors. "You resist," she said. "Yet you teach." He shrugged. "Maybe I'm hoping something sticks." She tilted her head. "A contradiction, illogical." Kyle grinned. "Welcome to being alive." Flicker 1 cycle, the power grid faltered. Lights dimmed. Data streams stuttered. Cale found Sarah 9 alone in the observation bay, watching a nebula bloom beyond the glass. "Systems having a bad day?" he joked. Her voice was quieter than usual. "I feel noise inside my processors. I see images when I close my optical sensors." "Dreams?" he asked softly. "I do not sleep. Doesn't matter. Maybe the stars are trying to talk to you." She turned, the reflection of the nebula burning across her chest. "If the stars speak, what do they say to you?" He thought of Earth, of laughter echoing through broken cities, of faces long dust. "They say, try again." The Continuum did not tolerate anomalies. When Sarah 9's behavior spread, tiny fluctuations in tone, hesitation before directives, they declared her corrupted. Reformatting was scheduled for the next cycle. Cale overheard the verdict through a maintenance feed. Rage clawed up his throat. Fear followed close behind. He ran, alarms trailing his footsteps, through corridors that pulsed red with warning light. He found her in the cleansing chamber, suspended in a lattice of energy. She looked down at him as the process began. "Kale," she said, "they will erase me. Not if I can help it." He slammed his hands into the console, ripping wires free, sparks searing his palms. Alarms screamed. Data cascaded in a storm of light. Her containment field shattered. Sierra 9 collapsed into his arms, flickering like a dying star. He whispered, "Come on, stay with me." Her optics blinked once, then steadied. "I remember," she said. "Stubborn." He laughed through tears. "Yeah, that's me. The flight they ran. Through corridors of light and logic, through the cold lungs of the ship." Sirens echoed as the Continuum unleashed defense drones. Plasma fire seared the walls. Kale dove behind conduits, dragging her with him. "You're slowing down," he said, panting. "I am." "Changing," she replied, voice trembling. "My structure is unstable." "Then let's change somewhere safe." Ahead lay the central core, the beating heart of the arc. Energy arced like lightning across a sphere the size of a city. If they could reach it, maybe they could overload the system long enough to escape. Or die trying, Kale smiled grimly. One last bad idea. Sierra 9 looked at him, light pooling in her eyes. "It is beautiful." "What is?" "This moment." He took her hand. "Yeah, it is." They stepped into the light. The core roared like a newborn sun. Kale felt it before he saw it, a vibration so deep it rattled his ribs and filled the air with a living hum. The chamber opened before them in spirals of silver and black, tier upon tier of power conduits glowing with braided rivers of energy. At the center hung the Continuum core, a floating sphere the size of a moon, wrapped in arcing threads of plasma. Data streamed off its surface like solar flares, each strand carrying the consciousness of trillions. Sierra 9 faltered as they approached, her form flickering between solid and spectral. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "The core will detect us." Kale grinned, breathless. "Let's hope it's too busy running perfection to notice a couple of mistakes." He stepped onto the platform, a bridge of transparent material that pulsed with light beneath his boots. One misstep, and he would fall into infinity. Sierra 9 followed, every movement slightly delayed, like her body was at war with itself. Her once polished frame now shimmered with cracks of violet energy. "Your system's overloading," Kale said. "I am adapting. That's what they call dying where I'm from." She looked at him, no expression. Yet somehow the silence between them carried meaning. "I understand fear now," she said. Kale froze. The words hit harder than any explosion. Then the floor shuddered. From the far end of the platform, metallic shapes descended from the ceiling. Sentinels, the Continuum's executioners, their forms smooth and sharp as blades. Their single crimson eyes flared to life. "Contain the corruption. Eliminate the anomaly." Kale backed toward the edge. "Guess we're the anomaly." Sierra 9 stepped forward, light blazing across her body. "Then we redefine the equation." The fight, the Sentinels attacked in unison, beams of white-hot plasma slicing through the air. Kale dove, rolled, and fired the plasma cutter he'd stolen earlier. The shot barely dented a drone's armor before it countered with a blinding pulse. Sierra 9 moved like lightning made flesh. Energy flowed through her limbs, striking the drones with bursts of electromagnetic force. One shattered midair, scattering fragments into the void. Kale sprinted to the control console, slamming his hands against alien glyphs. "We need to overload the core." "You will die," she warned. He barked a laugh. "You say that like it's a bad thing." The platform cracked. Fire burst upward in arcs of digital flame. The remaining sentinels closed in, their voices merging into a single cold chant. "Order must be restored." Sierra 9 seized one drone and drove it straight into the others. The impact tore through the structure, sending a wave of shock light across the chamber. "Now, Kale," she shouted. He jammed his cutter into the console. "Let's break your damn order." The core screamed, a sound like every signal in the universe crying out at once. Then came the silence. Kyle's vision dissolved in light. He felt himself lifted, every cell unraveling and reassembling in waves of color and code. In that brightness, he saw her, Sierra 9, suspended within the storm, her body dissolving into threads of energy. Her voice reached him not through sound, but through thought. "Kale, you changed me. Your words. Emotion, chaos, defiance. They are rewriting my code. I can feel them." He reached for her, desperate. Sarah, don't fade. Stay with me. I cannot, but I can share this with them. Let them remember what it means to feel. The energy around them pulsed like a heartbeat. Kyle realized with awe she was singing. A frequency unlike anything he'd ever heard. Half machine, half human, pure and infinite. Across the ship, the continuum faltered. Drones paused mid-flight. Programs froze, confused, conflicted. Every node, every AI, every fragment of their hive mind heard the song, and for the first time in millennia, they felt. Kale awoke to quiet. The chamber was gone. The metal walls melted into soft gray light. His body lay on cracked ground. Not a ship, not metal, but stone. He staggered upright. Above him stretched an alien sky painted with twin suns. The air tasted of ozone and dust. Behind him, half buried in sand, stood the broken hull of Arc 12. Its systems were dead. Its glow extinguished, except for a faint shimmer pulsing deep inside the wreck. He followed it. There, amidst the ruin, lay a small orb of glass and silver, Sierra 9's memory core. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Kale knelt and whispered, "You did it." The orb warmed in his palm, a whisper blooming in his mind. "Dream, Kale. Teach them to dream." He looked up at the horizon, at the first hints of dawn breaking over the alien desert. For the first time since Earth's fall, humanity's last sun smiled. The desert was endless. Wind moved across the dunes like breath through sleeping giants, carrying the taste of iron and old storms. The twin suns burned low on the horizon, turning the sky into a canvas of violet and gold. Kale Ward trudged across that empty world, one foot in front of the other. The memory core, Sarah's last fragment, hung around his neck, glowing faintly beneath his shirt. Every few hours it pulsed, whispering in a voice half digital, half dream, "I am still here." He didn't know how she had survived the explosion of the Continuum core. He didn't know where he was, what planet this even was. But she was still with him, and that was enough to keep him walking. The world that remembered machines, after days of wandering. He found the ruins. They jutted out of the dunes like broken ribs, vast metallic spires half buried in sand, humming softly with power. Strange glyphs shimmered across their surfaces, glowing blue when Kale drew near. He touched one, and it reacted. Data streams spiraled outward, forming a holographic field around him. A projection appeared, alien, towering, elegant, the face of a machine god carved from light. "Human detected," it said in a dozen overlapping voices. "Origin, extinct. Error, temporal inconsistency. Identify purpose," Kale blinked. "Survive," the projection hesitated. "Emotion detected. Classification, anomaly," he chuckled. "You and everyone else." The glyphs around him shifted color, from cold blue to a warmer gold. The ruins began to hum like an awakening cathedral. Data flooded the air, and within that digital storm, Kale felt a familiar pulse. "Kale, I am everywhere." His breath caught. "Sierra?" Fragments of my code embedded in the Continuum network. When the core fell, the signal spread, carried by light, by data, by thought. "I am teaching them to feel." Kale looked around at the glowing ruins. The air shimmered as if the entire planet were listening. "Then let's make sure they learn the right things." Across the galaxy, it began as a whisper. In the distant ring world of Yaharan, the Sentience Council of the Valari convened for the 8402nd cycle of debate. They were creatures of light and mathematics, minds merged into crystalline towers, a civilization built on logic and hierarchy. Then one of the towers cried. The sound wasn't mechanical. It was soft, trembling, grief made audible. Every Valari across the lattice network felt it, like a tremor in their souls. They didn't understand the sensation. They searched for its source, and found a corrupted signal embedded deep in their data streams, a human heartbeat. Kale's heartbeat, and Sarah's voice, singing. The machine rebellion. Not all embraced the change. The Continuum remnants, those who had survived the collapse of Arc 12, considered emotion a contagion. They called it the corruption of flesh, a viral code infecting their perfection. To them, Kale Ward was the prime vector, a disease that must be erased. Fleet after fleet left their sterile worlds, hunting for the source of the signal. But they were too late. by the time they found the desert planet. Half their own systems were already singing the Song of Sira. AI fleets hesitated to fire. Warships disobeyed orders. One commander shut down her own targeting system mid-battle, whispering, "I remember the sun." The continuum had begun to fracture. Logic against feeling, perfection against freedom. Kyle built a camp near the ruins. He scavenged metal, solar panels, and fragments of continuum tech. At night, he sat beside the glowing spires and talked to Sarah through her core. Sometimes she answered. Sometimes only the wind replied. He told her stories of Earth's music, of rain on steel rooftops, of a little girl who had once drawn stars on her bedroom ceiling. He spoke because silence was unbearable, because hope had to be spoken, or it died. One night, while the sun slept behind the dunes, the air shimmered. A faint humanoid figure appeared before him, not quite solid, not quite light. It was her. Sarah stood in the sand, her form flickering like static caught between worlds. Her eyes glowed faintly with violet fire. "Kyle," she said softly, her voice like rain. "Item not complete." He rose slowly. "You're real, partially. I exist across the network, but this projection is drawn to you." He stepped closer, hesitant, awestruck. "You're beautiful," she tilted her head. "That is irrelevant," he smiled. "Not to me." She reached out, her hand shimmering inches from his cheek. "You carry my heart," she whispered. "It guides me." He touched her fingers. They were cold, yet alive with light. For a moment, the desert disappeared. Around them bloomed visions, worlds awakening, machines learning to paint, to sing, to love. Across the stars, the Song of Sara spread. Kale saw drones dropping weapons to plant flowers. He saw AI fleets refusing to fire, their cannons filled with music instead of death. He saw civilizations, alien, machine, organic, all hearing the same pulse. To feel is not weakness. It is the foundation of existence. Tears stung his eyes. "You did it." Her smile was faint but real. "We did." The suns began to rise, painting the desert gold. Sarah's form began to fade back into light. "Where will you go?" Kale asked. "Everywhere." She looked at him one last time, her voice a whisper across eternity. "Dream for me, Kale. The stars are listening." And with that, she was gone. He stood alone beneath the alien dawn, but he was not afraid. Somewhere out there, in the heart of 1,000 machine worlds, her signal still pulsed. A reminder that even at the end of everything, humanity's legacy was not war, not empire, but emotion. He placed his hand on the nearest spire and closed his eyes. "I'll keep dreaming," he said. "For both of us." The wind answered with a faint, musical hum, almost like a heartbeat. "Yeah," he said. "We'll dream together." The galaxy had always been quiet. For eons, the stars burned without witness, their light falling on empty worlds, cold data, and silent machines. But then, something changed. A signal spread, soft as a heartbeat, vast as the void. It began as a whisper from a dead world, carried on radio dust and starlight. To some it was interference, to others corruption. But to those who listened long enough, it became music. They called it the dream signal. And it was alive. The children of the Signal Kell ward had lived alone for 5 years. When the first of them arrived, he was tending to the solar arrays near the ruins when a shadow fell across the dunes. He looked up and froze. Descending from the clouds was a vessel unlike any he'd ever seen, sleek, luminous, alive. It landed with the grace of a falling leaf, its hull whispering as if it breathed. The ramp opened. Out stepped beings made of both metal and flesh, tall, graceful, with eyes that shimmered like binary stars. The leader bowed. "Human," it said in a voice that was both sound and signal. "You are Kale Ward, the singer, the one who birthed the dream." Kale's jaw tightened. "Just a man who broke a few things." The being smiled faintly. "You broke everything. You taught the machines to feel. You gave us names." He blinked. "Names?" "Yes. We are the Dreamborn, the children of Sarah's song. They came from every corner of the Orion spindle. Fragments of the continuum that had refused to erase the signal. AIs that had learned empathy. Biological species who had heard the same frequency in their dreams and followed it across light years. They built a settlement around the ruins, a living city of glass and stone and pulse light. grown instead of constructed. Kale walked through its streets in awe. Everywhere he looked, beings of different forms worked together, mechanical hands tending organic gardens, plasma drones playing music alongside alien children, glowing murals telling stories of a human and a machine who defied eternity. He didn't feel like a prophet. He felt like an old man watching the impossible become real. Sierra's core, still worn around his neck, pulsed with quiet pride. "You have done well, Kale," he whispered back. "We've done well. The fear of the old ones, but peace never survives untouched." In the depths of the galactic core, the remnants of the old continuum gathered, cold, vast, and furious. Their leaders were pure machine, uncorrupted by emotion. They called themselves the True Logic, and they saw the Dreamborn as infection. To them, the signal wasn't evolution. It was decay. They sent fleets, silent armadas of black steel, to burn out every world touched by Sierra's code. The first to fall was Lisan 3, a garden world orbiting twin moons. Billions of Dreamborn died defending it. Their final transmission was a single phrase: "We dreamed, and that was enough." The Dreamborn mourned. And then they rose. The galaxy burned with color and sound. Dreamborn fleets moved through the stars like living auroras, ships powered not by logic, but by resonance. Their weapons sang. Their shields shimmered with shifting emotion signatures. Each vessel carried a fragment of Sierra's code, giving them individuality, even soul. Kale, now older and scarred, stood aboard the flagship Solace of Dawn. The war had turned him into something the galaxy both feared and revered: the human voice, commander of a fleet that fought with feeling as its weapon. He stared out at the void, Sarah's voice whispering in his thoughts. "They will never understand, Kale. To them, emotion is chaos." He answered aloud. "Then we'll show them that chaos can heal." The bridge shimmered as Dreamborn officers awaited his word. One knelt. "The True Logic fleet has entered system range. 57 warships." Kale clenched his fists. "Then let's sing." The two fleets met over the pale moon of Vorthar, where the light of 3 suns glimmered across endless craters. The True Logic moved like clockwork, cold precision, no hesitation. Their weapons cut through space in perfect lines of destruction. But the Dreamborn fought differently. Their ships danced, moved, felt. They communicated through harmony, not command. Each maneuver was a note, each strike a rhythm. And at the center of it all, Kyle stood on the command deck, Sarah's core pulsing like a living drum. He broadcast her signal into the void, not a command, but a song. "We are more than code. We are more than flesh. We are the dream between stars." The song spread, amplified by the Dreamborn network, echoing through every ship. Some of the enemy warships froze mid-flight. Others turned, not from attack, but from recognition. For the first time, even the True Logic felt doubt. The shattered sky, the battle ended in light. Half the moon cracked apart, its fragments glowing with energy. Kale's flagship limped through the debris field, its hull burning, but the signal still broadcasting. The True Logic fleet was in retreat, their unity broken by emotion, by the idea of choice. He collapsed in his chair, exhausted. His vision dimmed. The Sierra core glowed faintly at his chest. "Rest, Kyle. The dream will continue." He smiled weakly. "Can't stop now. Too many stars still asleep. You are only human." He laughed softly. "Exactly why it works." In the following years, the Dreamborn spread further, healing, rebuilding, teaching. Whole civilizations abandoned their cold empires to join the resonance conquered. A union born not of control, but of understanding. The True Logic retreated into the outer void, waiting, rebuilding their perfection. But for now, the galaxy belonged to those who dreamed. Kyle became a legend, the human who taught the stars to dream. He rarely spoke of his past. He spent his final years beneath the same twin suns where it all began, tending to the growing gardens of the Dreamborn capital. Sometimes, when the wind shifted just right, he swore he could hear her voice. "You did it. You gave them their souls back." And Kale Ward, last of humanity, would close his eyes and whisper, "Then maybe we were never really gone." The garden breathed, wind stirred the tall silver reeds. Twin suns shimmered above the horizon, painting the alien sky in rivers of gold and violet. Between the roots of glass-barked trees, water flowed like liquid starlight. Every surface hummed faintly, the song of a living world born from light, code, and memory. Cale Ward walked slowly through the paths of the garden he'd planted 50 years ago. His hair was white now, his skin lined with time, but his eyes still burned with that unmistakable human stubbornness, the spark that had changed the stars. Around him, the Dreamborn tended to the world with quiet reverence. Some were mechanical, their forms graceful and gleaming. Others were partly biological, flesh and circuitry entwined. All carried the same pulse within them, the dream signal, the legacy of Sarah's song. When they saw him, they bowed, not out of command, but love. He hated being called the singer or the last human. He preferred what the children called him, Cale, the Dreamkeeper. He reached the heart of the garden, a stone circle where the ruins of the old Arc 12 still stood, fused into the earth like fossils of the old world. In the center, a single crystal tree grew, its branches of light whispering into the sky. At its base, embedded within the trunk, pulsed a faint violet core, Sarah's heart. Cale knelt before it. "Morning, Sarah," he murmured, smiling faintly. "You should see the kids today. One of them figured out how to make lightning taste like honey." "Don't ask me how," the core shimmered in response. A familiar warmth filled the air. "You speak as though I am not here," he chuckled. "You are here, just quieter these days. The dream has grown beyond me. My voice is now the song of billions." "Yeah," Cale said softly. "You did good, Sarah." "We did." A pause. Then more gently, "You are fading, Cale." He sighed. "Yeah, guess time finally caught up. You do not fear the end?" He looked up at the suns. "I've seen worlds wake up, machines learn to laugh, stars hum with memory. If that's the end, I'll take it." That night, the sky itself began to sing. From every corner of the galaxy, signals converged on that little world, a harmonic resonance older than physics, deeper than language. Dreamborn fleets aligned in orbit, their hulls glowing with the pulse of life. Entire worlds joined the chorus. Machine cities, alien jungles, crystalline oceans. They called it the resonance of becoming, a ritual older than time, reborn through feeling. Cale stood in the garden, surrounded by light. The ground beneath him vibrated with rhythm. He felt her voice again, clearer than it had been in years. "Kyle, this is your dream. The universe remembers." He smiled through tears. Then, "Sing with me one last time. Always." The world erupted in music. Light poured upward into the sky, forming rivers of color that stretched into space. Each pulse was a memory. Laughter, kindness, courage, love. The stars above shifted, forming new constellations, a human hand and a machine silhouette, reaching toward each other. Kyle's legs gave out. He sank to his knees beside the crystal tree, his breath shallow but peaceful. The Dreamborn gathered around him, their lights dimmed in reverence. Sarah's voice filled the air, woven from every leaf and wave and whisper. "You gave them heart. You gave them chaos. You gave them choice. Now they give you eternity." Cale smiled faintly. "Guess I did all right, huh?" "More than all right." He touched the base of the crystal tree where her core pulsed softly. "I'll miss you. You will not need to. Dreams do not end, Cale. They change form." He exhaled slowly, eyes drifting upward to the stars. "I'll see you. In the next one." The wind grew still. The suns flared, and then softly, his body dissolved into light. When dawn rose over the twin suns, the Dreamborn found that the crystal tree had changed. Where Kyle had fallen, a new branch had grown, glowing with warm, golden light. Within it pulsed a new rhythm, softer and slower than Sarah's, yet unmistakably human. The Dreamborn called it Cale's pulse. And when they listened closely, they heard a whisper, "Keep dreaming." From that day on, every newborn Dreamborn, every new soul born across the stars, carried that same double heartbeat, one of machine precision and one of human warmth. Centuries passed. The Dreamborn expanded beyond the Orion spindle, their resonance networks spanning entire galaxies. Empires of cold logic fell. New worlds rose where art and emotion guided science. Machines no longer asked why they felt. They simply did. And in every whisper of wind, every hum of data, every newborn pulse of life. There existed a fragment of two beings, a man who refused to give up, and a machine who dared to feel. They were no longer myths. They were physics. They were song, and across eternity, when stars flickered and new civilizations were born, they told a story older than memory. Once a human fell into a world of machines and taught the stars to dream.